Hello, I've been doing a few experiments recently to see how I could use the iomixer. That's right, it has a proper name now. It's not the S-Bus mixer, it's the iomixer, okay? Input-output mixer, that's what it does, right? Anyway, the main thing I wanted to try was gyro stabilization on a fast car. I didn't actually have this fast car at the time, I only had this slow one. So I got this one for this experiment, and it's a pretty nice car actually, but I don't want to ramble too much about that because I'll do that later in the video. That's the iomixer inside there for that one. But yeah, so started off with gyro stabilization, and one thing led to another, and I did a whole bunch of other things as well. And then I did come back to this one afterwards because I realized I could put a servo on the back of this because it has a space there for one where you can do four-wheel steering. So I set that up and tried something with four-wheel steering as well. Anyway, let's see how it all went.
And I've got these two wires going between the receiver down there and my iomixer on pins 9 and 10. So these are going to be servo PWM inputs to the iomixer, and then pins 11 and 12 are going down here to the ESC and the servo. So this is how we get the iomixer in between what would normally be happening. And then on the USB cable here I can use the configurator interface, and I have it turned on and running. Values of 0.5 and 0.5, which means the middle of the range in each case. Now if I turn the radio on, and you'll see the top one now, if I move the pistol grip, let's see if I can show you this here, like that. So now you'll see when I squeeze the trigger I'm getting a reading of 1 full forwards and 0 full reverse, and then when I let it go it's at about 0.5, so that's the middle. And then for steering, looks like I've trimmed the steering to be not quite 0.5, 0.512 when I let it go. All the way left we get 0.912, and then all the way right we get 0.112, like that. So I'm just going to put labels on this one and this one to tell me that this is the throttle and that's the steering. Throttle, we need a servo PWM output, and I connect that to there. This is going to be pin, what did I say it was? 9, 10, 11 and 12, right. So we need this one to go there on pin 12, and this is just the direct output, so we're not changing anything. So what we should expect to see when we actually power the car up properly by turning the actual LiPo battery power on, we should see that we just have the normal control. You can see now I'm turning that and turning the wheels like that. Yeah, so we didn't change anything. Now we want to put something in between the, well, we're not going to fiddle with the throttle right now, but we want to put something in between this steering here. And I'm not exactly sure what we're going to need, but it's going to definitely involve the IMU. So put an IMU, and we're looking for gyro Z, which is the gyro Z is when the board rotates in that direction like that. And eventually I'm going to attach this board inside this cage, so it's going to be, oh, those lights are being powered by USB 2 at the moment. Yeah, so this board is going to be sitting down flat here, so we want to be detecting that direction of rotation with the gyro. And basically we want to add, using this binary operator where we have an add. So we want to take our original steering input from the radio control, and then we want to add some gyro value, and then that's going to be our output to the servo itself. But well, let's just turn this on and I'll just disconnect the servo for now in case it goes a bit crazy and upload that, because I just wanted to show you the value that we get from this. Alright, let's bring that back in. Now you can see we're getting values with just a small movement here, fairly slow movement, is giving me values up to like 40 or 50 or so, and then negative 40 or 50, around about that. And the value that we're using for our output to the servo, as we saw before, that is scaled between 0 and 1. So we're going to need to make this a lot smaller before we add it into there, otherwise it's just going to overpower everything. So what we do to do that is we could use another binary operator like this. So we could multiply that like that, or I tend to use a scale one, which is also a multiply, but it's just a little bit more straightforward because it only does one thing, whereas those binary operators, they do all kinds of things, but this is just a little bit clearer to understand what you're doing, I think. So scale of 1 means nothing is going to change. So we want to change. We want to scale this way down by something like 100th. So instead of getting a value up to say 40 or 50, we're going to get a value up to say 0.5, which is still too much, isn't it? So let me go 0.02 maybe. Let's try that. And I'll just turn that off. And if this is going the wrong way, which it might be, we'll have to try it, then we'll just make that negative 0.02, just to make sure that our gyro correction is going in the direction that we need it to go. But I won't know that until I've put this board, until I've actually mounted this board on there properly. But just to show you the servos moving with that, I will upload. And is this going to do something for me? No. Oh, it's still disconnected here. Hold on. Got to connect it to the servo, right? Okay. Alright, so wheels went back to center. And now you can see, hopefully you can see, let's get all this in shot. So now you can see when I'm moving the board, when I move it and stop, it goes back to center because now the gyro is giving a 0 value. Yeah, so I'm not sure if that's going the right way yet, but like I say, if it's going the wrong way, all we need to do is change this to a negative value. And if we want a stronger gyro response, we increase that value, otherwise we decrease it. That doesn't look too bad, actually. Might just go with that to start with. Maybe slightly less. 0.15. Actually, if I just hold it here and pick up the car and move it a bit, I can see that that is going backwards. That's really not what we want. So I'll just go into this value and make that negative, like that, and then upload and save that. Now it should be going. Is that right? I think that's right. Okay, slight change of plans. When I started to put this together, I realized that if I wanted to keep it with this really convenient like hinging mechanism here, and also have my iomixer inside here, I would have to have 4 cables coming from the receiver at the front here, and where these ESCs and servos come out. They'd have to go all the way back up to where the hinge is, and then forward. And then, yeah, you'd need 4 of those, and be quite a lot of cabling to fit in there, and a little bit of a nuisance. So what I thought I would do is I just made this board here where I put my iomixer and the receiver for a different radio. This is the Dumbo RC one there, and this is 6 channels. So I'm not going to use the receiver that came with this car. That's only 2 channels anyway, I'm pretty sure. So it's a little bit limited in what I could do with it. And so I'm going to use this one, which has some extra switches and dials on it so I can do a few more interesting things. So let me just show you what's going on with those channels on my iomixer side. I'll just turn it on, and let me just shift this over a little bit so you can see it. Okay, so we've got this toggle switch here, which is showing up. This is just going to give us a 0 or a 1, like that. And then we've got the 3-position switch here, which is going to give us a 0 or about 0.5, and then 1 at the last position, like that. And then on the top here we've got 2 dials. Dial 1 on the left, which is going to give us also between 0 and 1, like that, and dial 2 between 0 and 1. And these are very useful because what we can do, I'll set this up off camera I think, but just to give you a rough idea, let's say we wanted to use dial 2, and instead of having this hard-coded value of 0.0015 that we weren't really quite sure what we wanted here, we could use that in real time. We could use this dial to set that value and alter the strength or the gain for the steering gyro. We probably want to scale it down a bit again, so I would do this like that. We put it through another scale. This scale, we need to scale that down by about what we had before. So still need to make it a lot smaller. 2-ish maybe. And this needs to be negative. So it might look like that's a bit of a waste of time, but what that means is it's not going to be that all the time. It's going to be coming from our dial, and I can adjust my gains while I'm driving around, which could be quite handy. And once you've got it figured out what you want, then you could come back to this screen and you can just look at this value. Let's say that's the value we ended up with, 0.619. Then you could just disconnect this and put 0.619 in there, I guess. Boom, like that. Or you could multiply 0.619 by 0.002 and just put the value directly into there eventually. Okay, so this is the setup that I'm going to go with to start with. It's getting a little bit more involved now, but I've decided to use the dial and the toggle switch, and I'm going to multiply those together so that when the toggle switch is off, it means that we're not going to get any gyro response, because this one's going to be 0 multiplied by whatever that is will be 0 coming out of here. So in order to make this gyro do anything, I have to make sure that my toggle switch there is on, and then using dial 1 there I can fine-tune this value that comes out of there that's going to be used to scale my gyro value. So just to show you what I mean by that, when we're all the way to the left here we get nothing, and then all the way to the right we get whatever's in that scale value. So negative 0.002, but I can fine-tune it to any point between 0 and that value, like this. So I should be able to get just the right level of gyro response that I want. Okay, I have the car all set up and ready to go now, and because I had those extra switches and dials, I just couldn't help myself, and I wanted to do something with the throttle as well to fiddle around with that. So what I've decided to do is add a mode where we can use this slew, so that instead of the throttle being directly connected to your trigger finger, for example, if you wanted to do a little bit more of a controlled launch for maybe drag racing or something, you could set it to ramp up over time. In this case, 6 seconds is a little bit too much to be useful, I think, but I'll just exaggerate it to, demonstrate. So I don't think I'll go into too much detail, but I'll just show you that we're using the 3-position switch, and we also want to we only want to use that slew when the 3-position switch is on and when the throttle is going forwards. So when we brake or when we reverse, we don't want to have that slow because we might want to brake quickly. So we only use the slow ramping up when we're going forwards. And also on the second dial, I've used that dial to essentially scale the throttle. So I can scale the throttle all the way back to nothing by turning the dial all the way to the left. And this might be useful if you want to give the car to your kids or whatever, and you don't want them to just go flat out, because this thing's pretty fast. I find it a little bit hard to control, to be honest, at full speed. So you could do something like this to use that dial to set the top speed to something that's not the actual top speed of that car. And then I also stuck a little GPS on so we could measure the speed, and a little LED screen to show a few things. So we have 4 rows on the LED screen. We've got the age of the GPS. This just lets you see if the GPS is actually connecting and sending you messages. And also the second. This is the second of the hour, minutes, seconds that the GPS tells you. So these first 2 fields here, you don't really need them. They're just useful when you're setting everything up to make sure that the connection is working okay. Number of satellites, also maybe not that necessary. Really what we wanted to use is this one here, which is the ground speed, and in my case I've set that to kilometers per hour. But we don't really want to look at the current speed. What we really want to look at is the highest recorded speed, and we're using this store node for that. So the store node keeps the value that was put into it, and it just delivers that to the other side. But the important thing is that this value that it holds is only allowed to change at certain times. So we have this condition dictating when this value is allowed to change. So the only time this value should change is when the current speed is higher than any other speed that we've seen before. That makes it the highest recorded speed, right? So we have some logic going on here, binary operator to check if the current speed is greater than the highest recorded speed that we know. And we also only want to record that when we have enough satellites, because one thing that can happen when you first turn the GPS on and it doesn't know where it is in the world, it can take a while to figure that out. And sometimes while it's figuring that out, you can get crazy speeds like, 1,000 kilometers per hour and stuff like that. But as long as you check that this field here, the fixed type, is it has to be 3 or greater to really know that you've got a good value. So I'm checking if that's greater than 2, and only then, so we've got this and, so if we have enough satellites and we've found a better speed, then we update our highest recorded speed. That's how that's going to work. And then we're just going to display that on the OLED screen as well. Okay, so just to demonstrate those features, I'll have to show you the OLED screen afterwards, I think. But so I've got steering, and at the moment my switch for the gyro is off. So if I move the car, nothing's going to happen. And if I turn it on, you'll see the steering's going there, and I can scale it with that dial there. The throttle at the moment is just normal, so whatever I do with my trigger finger I'm going to get immediately there. Now if I just pin it at full throttle immediately, oh shit, just about dropped it. So you can see it ramps up to full throttle really quick. If I turn my switch on here to do that sort of throttle limiting or whatever, now I pin the throttle again. So it ramps up slower. Unfortunately there's a bit of a dead zone there, so you'll notice that immediately after I hit the throttle nothing happened, because there's that dead zone. It's kind of a bummer. You could get around that with a mapping node if you wanted to figure out the exact value that ESC started to move at. That would be something you could do. That's what the screen shows. So we really only care about that last one at the bottom there. And I think everything's ready to go. So let's go and take this outside and give it a spin. Okay, I came to this car park here to do this because even though there are gravel roads at my place, they're full of big rocks. So every metre or so the car just bounces up like crazy, and it's very hard to just drive along in a straight line at all. So here we are at a place with little fine gravel like that, and the gyro is off. So let's just see what we get like that. Not bad actually. Not bad. And let's see if the gyro, just with whatever setting I have here, is going to make any difference. I think a little bit. I'll just turn the gyro way up to full so that it's going to probably too much. Let's see what this does. Yeah, see that's actually worse than no gyro. Man, this thing is fast. I'm barely touching the throttle really. I mean, when I'm bringing it back, that is. So let's turn the gyro down to like quarter, and I'll stand back a bit because I'm getting face full of stones when it takes off. Ah, see that? See, that's not enough. It just took off to the left. So maybe about halfway where I had it before was where I should have had it. Ready? Yeah. Alright, seems decent. Let's do a high speed run. Do some donuts. And let's just see what the top speed is. Whoops. Oh, one thing I noticed with this gyro is when you go in reverse, it doesn't help you. So let's just go in reverse a little bit with no steering. The gyro will actually, see, it does the opposite of what it should be doing. How do you fix that? I guess one way you could do it is to only do the gyro when the throttle is going forwards. I guess that would be pretty close to a fix for it. Alright, now let's try my other setting where we had the delayed throttle or the slew throttle. So I'll turn that on and then full throttle. Yeah, like I say, I've exaggerated that, and there's also that dead band, which is kind of annoying. So ready, again. That doesn't kick up quite as much stones in my face. Yeah, but I'm finding when I'm driving normally though, it's a bit annoying to have that delay. So it's really only useful if you want to like launch without, you know, losing too much traction, maybe like that. Anyway, yeah, so I think we probably got to the top speed before, but just in case we didn't, I'll go all the way back here. Okay, so that should have been pretty close to top speed. Man, this thing's fast. Look at this. Oops. Okay, so that's driving with the gyro on. Let me turn it off and see if it... Oh yeah. Oh, see? Yeah. Oh shit, yeah. Oh, whoa, 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 hey, hey, hey. Oh yeah. It's actually... Wow. You know, it's funny, when I was doing those, when I was trying to do those straight line launches, I thought that might be the best way to demonstrate
the difference between having the gyro and not having the gyro. Maybe it is for you because you know that I'm not doing any input when I do that, right? But when you're actually driving it, the best way to tell the difference is just to drive around wherever you want to go, and you'll notice pretty quickly that when the gyro's on, it's not on now, by the way, but when the gyro is on, it's a lot easier to get it to go where you want it to. So I'll turn the gyro back on now and just check. Yep. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, you can see it working too. Maybe. Let's see if I can bring it close enough so that you can actually see. Right, so I'll let go of the steering wheel here. Oh, it's too fast. Man, it's fast. Oh shit. Man, these things are such good value for money. When I was a kid, I had a Tamiya Fox. Anybody remember those? For the time, that was pretty decent, but cost a lot more than this, and that was just for the car only. And by this time, the battery would already be flat. And it was a crappy old NiCad battery, so it took ages to charge as well. Whoop. Oh, no, I wasn't trying to do that there, so... Even with the gyro, you can still have a bit of a spin out sometimes, but I haven't flipped it over. Woo-wee! Okay, so this is all with gyro on. And let me just turn gyro off. Oh yeah, yeah, see it's quite different. I'm just trying to drive along like I was before. I find, oh yeah, basically I have to stick to about 3/4 throttle if I don't have the gyro on. Otherwise it just sort of loses, yeah. I mean, it's still amazingly good. I'm so impressed with this car. I bought this car purely for the purposes of making this video that you're watching. But I might keep it. I was thinking to sell it afterwards, but I don't know. Oh, I added a... let's come over here. I added a SD card logger there, and it's logging the G-forces in the 3 dimensions and also the speed, the current speed. See if I can look what the top speed is there at the moment. Okay, I can't see that without my glasses, unfortunately. I'll have to... I did bring my glasses with me, they're in the car. I'll have to go and check later, but now that we have really good traction on the grass, I was just wondering what is the highest G-force that it can generate when accelerating like this. So so I think you'd get a higher G-force here with better traction on the grass than you would on the slippery stones. Okay, let's see if the gyro makes any difference on here. Probably not. No, it's nice and straight on the grass. See this? Oh. Jeez, a little too straight. Okay, you're not going to be able to see that, but it says 58.22. It looked a lot faster than that, but that's kilometers per hour. I think these can take a 3S battery actually, so it would go a lot faster on that, but for me, that's plenty.
So those GPS speed numbers that you were seeing at the bottom of the screen there were recorded by this little thing here. I'll just show you this because I forgot to mention it earlier in the video. It's called an OpenLog serial data logger, so it records from a UART output coming from the iomixer, and it's basically a little Arduino, I guess, ATmega 328P, and on the back it has this SD card writer in this case, and that just logged some of the data that I chose to log. And when I got back home, I used this little utility called dump bin to take that log file that's there and convert it into a CSV file that I could use to make some graphs. You can actually log directly as CSV to begin with, so you don't need to do this step. It's just that the binary format logging is much faster and you can log more values a little bit more efficiently. So anyway, I just ran this program like that, and that gave me the CSV that we see here, or at least the first 4 columns, 5 columns, something like that. And then I've put a couple other columns here just to scale these values and use a moving average. I found, unfortunately, that the accelerometer value was very, very noisy. I had to use a moving average of 10 values to get it to this point there. That's the red line, where it was to get it to the point where it was actually readable. The blue line for the speed was pretty good. I didn't really need to massage that data at all. So that's what we're seeing here. We've got speed in kilometers per hour and forward g-forces multiplied by 10. Otherwise it would be just a little bit too small to see together. So what that means is when you see 6 here, for the g-force, that means 0.6 g. So for example, here we had almost 0.6 g forward as we accelerated there, and you can see the speed picking up in line with it. So the top speed here was only about 11 or so kilometers per hour. This must have been when I was fiddling around right at the beginning of the drive, just before I turned the camera on, I think. Here's some other scenes from the trip. You can see the largest g-force here is 1.2-ish g. So none of it was as impressive as I thought it might be. And I think the only reason this one went up quite high here is because we had just come off a very strong negative G. So this would have been braking. So as you can see, the speed went up quite high, and then I slammed on the brakes and speed dropped very quickly from 48-ish to 10. And then I must have just slammed the throttle on forward again. So combined with that throttle, the car would also have lurched a little bit backwards. So that's why we got a little bit higher than normal acceleration G-force there. And then the highest speed run, as we saw, was 58 kilometers per hour, which is this one there. Looks like, I'm pretty sure that was the highest one of the trip. But again, the highest G-force we saw was only about 1.2. And this is the speed for the whole trip overall. Actually, it looks like I've cut a bit off there. But anyway, you can, so you can log values like this and look at them afterwards if you want to. Okay, so in order to check the point where these wheels actually start turning, I'm going to use this thing called a tweak number, and just temporarily I'm going to connect that directly to my throttle servo output, so that when I slide this slider here, you should find a point where the wheels start spinning, and we want to use that later on, so just keep a note of it. Whoa. 593, and they go off. Seems like they go off at a different point when you're reducing the throttle. 595, 591. So it looks like about 0.59 they turn on. 589. Alright, well, I'll call it 0.59, I think. And another thing I wanted to check is what is the value that the normal receiver gives for a full throttle input. So if I squeeze the throttle here, we can see, we can read that using the live value of this node there. And if I go full throttle, we get about 9.98-ish. So the next day I went out for a drive again, but first I made a bunch of changes to the program, and this is what I ended up with in total. Got a little bit carried away, so I'll just show you the important parts of this and what they do. This part here actually was already in the program when we saw it from the first day, so you could think of each one of these orange nodes as one column in that CSV file. This is how the logging is done. In this case, I was taking values from the accelerometer, X, Y, and Z, and the GPS ground speed, but these logging nodes could just be connected to anything in here that you wanted to log, could be logged. And as I mentioned, there's binary and CSV options here for the output, so I could have done this in CSV as well, since there's only 4 nodes. That wouldn't have been a problem at all. And I was logging at 50 Hertz, which is the maximum speed to log at. So let's have a look at what we did with the so this section here goes into the throttle, and so we saw that this slewed throttle was causing a little bit of a nuisance because it takes 6 seconds to go from 0 to full speed. So that first little like half a second or a third of a second or so, it actually doesn't reach past the deadband of the ESC. So the motors don't move. It just kind of feels a bit weird. So what I did to fix that was I figured out at what point, what signal is high enough to cause the motor to start turning. And I'm using this mapping node, and this is taking a value as the input from 0.5 to 1. So this is the positive range of the throttle, in other words, moving forwards. So remember that 0.5 is where we're not touching the throttle at all. It's just the car has stopped. And as soon as it goes above 0.5 at all, we want it to jump up to, in this case I've set that to 0.6, because as we saw, 0.59 or thereabouts is when the motor will actually start turning. Now, some people might be looking at this thinking that's a bit dangerous, because isn't there a little bit of jitter in that throttle? So it's sort of bouncing around. It might jump over 0.5 even when you're not touching it, and that is true. But don't worry, it's safe, because remember there's only certain situation when we're actually going to be using that slew map throttle. So there's a test here to decide which are we going to use, the normal throttle or the special one, and that test is called use slew. And if we have a look at what that test is, or the conditions for that usage, we're only going to do it when that switch that we're using is turned on, and a new condition called throttle pinned. So this is why we were checking what is the signal that the radio gives for a full throttle, and I think it was 0.98 or something like that. So we have a new condition that decides or checks when the normal throttle is greater than 0.9, and the switch is on. That's the only time we're going to be allowed to use this slew map. So it's never going to happen if the throttle's just sitting there idle. It's only going to happen when the user is intentionally trying to go fast at this, high throttle situation. So hopefully this will get rid of that dead band, and as soon as we do full throttle, or almost as soon as we do full throttle, we should see the car start to move. That's the idea with that one. Oh, and I also put I was getting a little bit worried that while I was testing things at the bench, the car might just suddenly take off and try and drive away if I got something wrong. So since I freed up one of these switches from the gyro section, as we'll see in a minute, I use that toggle switch as a throttle cut switch here. So right at the last step here, before we actually pass the output to the servo, I just put in another scale based on that switch, so that if that switch is off, the throttle will always just do nothing. So yeah, the throttle cut switch. All right, so this section down here is the steering, and before we had this gyro value being scaled in real time by my dial as I was driving, but from the first day's testing, I was able to figure out that this scale of 0.0016 negative was about the right value. So I just put that directly in, and there's no dynamic scaling for that anymore. But since I felt like being fancy still, I thought I would do a couple of things. And one of the problems that we're having with the gyro is that when you're driving in reverse, this dynamic or automatic changing of the steering actually makes things worse, because it turns the wheels in the opposite way, opposite to what would keep the car going straight. So I decided to use the throttle value. Unfortunately, we don't really know when the car is going forwards or backwards. Even when the throttle is going backwards, the car might only be braking. The car might still be going forwards, but we can't really tell. So I thought the best we could do is just look at the throttle input and only apply the gyro correction if the throttle is making the car go forwards at the current time. So unfortunately what that means is if you're moving along quite fast and then you put the brake on, the gyro is going to turn off. So as soon as you stop, as soon as you brake, it starts to get a bit wobbly again. But I thought that would be better than having the gyro on all the time while you're driving backwards. Another thing I thought I would do, just getting a little bit fancy here, is use the ground speed in kilometers per hour to make the gyro gains less at speed. I don't really know if this is a good idea, and I couldn't really tell if it made a whole lot of difference. I'm actually wondering if it might be better backwards, but anyway, what I did was, so this is kilometers an hour here, so 0 to 70, because we figured out that the car's top speed is about 58, maybe 60 if you're lucky, kilometers per hour, which would be about there. So what this is going to do is, in case I didn't show you before, these are customizable like that, so just put that back there. Yeah, you can put more points in here and change this graph however you want. And then, anyway, so the idea, as you can probably tell by now, is that when we're not moving at all, or when we're moving very slow, we do the full gyro output, or just one. And as we get faster and faster, it's going to do less gyro until we get to here, where we're only doing about 20% of what we would have been doing when we're going slower. So like I say, I don't know if this really helps, and it might even be better the other way around, but I couldn't really tell the difference. Let me know what you think about that, if gyro should be backed off at speed or made stronger. I don't know. It just seemed like it's more risky to have the gyro working harder at higher speeds. And I think that's all that I changed. I also add these here too. So I'm logging the lat long position of the car as well, but I didn't do anything with that. I just had it logging. Okay, so let's test out those changes. I'm just going to do it here nearby my home. I discovered that this bit of road here is actually not too bad. Like there's only a few larger stones around, so it might not be too bad. And it's a lot easier for me to get here. Plus that other place, I was going to drive all the way in there, but I realized that it's a Sunday afternoon, so there's probably going to be lots of people there. Anyway, so the first thing we wanted to check was the throttle cut, which, as you can see, throttle is cut, and then when I turn this switch on, we should get some movement. But you'll notice that when I pin the throttle here, that's as fast as it's going to go, because I have my dial set to limit the maximum throttle that it can output. So this might be good for sort of getting to the start of your drag strip. Now you probably wouldn't drive to the end of your drag strip start, would you? You'd put it on the starting line. But anyway, if you just wanted to make sure you weren't wasting too much power and just sort of dribbling around for some reason, you could do it like this. Of course, on a dial it's not very convenient, because to go faster I have to turn the dial all the way up, and then to get back to this I'm going to have to put my dial back to where it was. But you could put this on a switch, of course, so that you could just quickly switch between these two modes. And one thing about having it on the dial that's convenient though, is that if I just hold the throttle all the way down, now I can adjust that speed. So let's say this is the taxi speed that I wanted. It's a little bit more reasonable. I notice my gyro's behaving a bit funny sometimes. It's weird. Anyway, so enough of that taxi speed. Let's put the throttle limit all the way up to full throttle. So now, okay. Alright, so now we're back to full throttle, and now I wanted to check that the gyro does nothing in reverse. So let me just show you what I mean. So we have gyro working there. If I go forwards, we get gyro. If I'm going backwards though, no gyro. So it's probably going to spin around a bit anyway because it's a bit bumpy, but let's just try a bit of reverse driving. Okay, I don't have a whole lot of room here, unfortunately, but hopefully you could see that it wasn't tending to get the gyro in the opposite way that it was yesterday, and sort of making the car spin around like crazy.
it just goes straight. And then when we're going forwards, we should have gyro, right? Hang on. Let's try this. Yeah. So, because the ground's not as smooth, it's hard for the gyro to work as well as it was yesterday. But you should be able to see that the gyro is doing something when we go forwards. Oh man, okay. Quite fast. Alright, so the last thing that I wanted to check was my ramping up mapped throttle launch. So to get that, I turn this switch on and then I just pin the throttle. So if I don't pin the throttle, if I raise it more gradually, I just get the normal behavior. Oops. But there's a special case, remember, when the throttle is pinned to over 90%. Yeah. Let's do it going this way. So throttle to full. Yeah. Of course, I can't really hold it on for that long, unfortunately, but you should see. Let's see if we can get it all the way up to full throttle, because it's on a 6-second slew, right? So it's going to take 6 seconds to get from nothing to full. Hopefully that's enough distance, and well, you just trust me, I'm just going to pin the throttle all the way full here. So that was maybe 6 seconds. Let's try it going this way, so throttle to full. Oh yeah, I can actually control it reasonably well too. This gravel is very slippery. Alright, let's try again. Let's get it, I'll just bring it back a little bit to where you can see it a bit better, hopefully. Alright, so throttle to full. Oh, whoa! See what I mean about those stones? Even a small stone, even these small stones like that seem to just make it go boing sometimes. But yeah, I think that pretty much demonstrates what I wanted to show you. So just one more time, throttle to full. And notice how there's no delay with that deadband like we had yesterday. It starts, I wouldn't say it starts immediately, but it's very close to immediately because of the mapping that we're using. Anyway, so if you're not doing a controlled launch situation, it's actually kind of annoying to have that delay though, so I'm just going to turn that off, and I'm going to turn you off, and I'm just going to have some fun. Or maybe I'll keep you on. How about that? Woohoo! By the way, that speed that we got yesterday, 58, I realise that's not particularly impressive. I've seen plenty of videos, the old the Talbots and the Schifrins of the YouTubes doing a whole lot better, and some guy in America has the record, I think, for 208 miles an hour or something. But yeah, so 58 kilometers an hour is not particularly impressive. 57, you're not going to be able to see that, but it says 57 at the moment. 57.09. That's actually not bad considering, I was going downhill there though, so maybe that helped. Yeah, but it just goes to show you what a novice I am with cars, I guess, that I thought that was really, really fast. Maybe it just looks fast because the car is small. Nice to have a hill or something to drive up and down rather than just that boring flat car park. That's probably not going to work, yeah. Oh, I think all this, see this here, I think this washed down here and all that rain that we had last month from up there, that's why it's so soft and fine there, I think.
That's not going to work, is it? I was going to see how far I could get sideways along this wall here. Not very far. Need some more skills or a bigger car, I think. Alright, I'll just do a little bit of no steering here. Well, that didn't work very well. Are we gyroing? Yeah. I guess it's just the bumps. Sometimes it just can't do anything about a big bump, right? Well, I'm pretty sure it's better with the gyro than without, though. That was what I could tell yesterday when I was able to switch between them. Oh, did you see that? As soon as I put the brakes on there, the gyro turned off, right? And it just sort of slid over to the side like that. Yeah, this is what I really should have done to give this a good test today is use this other dial here, because I'm not using that for anything at the moment. I could have used that to turn my gyro off and on, and then I could do this little like circuit that I've been doing a few times, then turn the gyro off and see how much difference it makes. Uh-oh. That's it. 57.09. I think that's exactly what it was before.
So those were the tests that I did with this car, and then did you think this video was finished? Oh, no. Yeah, so everything worked pretty well, about as well as I could have expected. It's not that easy to demonstrate how well the gyro is working actually in a video, apart from that straight line test, but it turns out that that's not all there is to it. You need to kind of drive it yourself to really evaluate it. But yeah, most of the tests worked alright, nothing broke or fell off. Amazingly, this screen, which is just sort of holding in there quite loosely, that didn't fall out either, which was nice. There's a whole lot more other things you could do. One thing I thought of was, like for drag racing, you could use either the GPS speed or the acceleration G-force to determine how much throttle you used, so that you're always on the edge of using like the maximum throttle you could use. If you use too much, then your wheel's going to spin out and you lose traction. But there's probably some way you could figure out, maybe with the PID controller from the forward acceleration G-forces, what sort of a throttle you should be using. And it might not be linear, so you might want to use one of those mappings to put a curve on it. I think I've been watching too many Cletus McFarlane videos lately, actually. That's what made me think of that, because they have really sophisticated computerized systems in their cars to bring the power on to a point so that they're just on the edge of spinning out. I think that's what they want to do for the drag racing. Anyway, let's put that aside. So this car here is not quite so dynamic, a little bit more of a slow lumbering beast, and has a newly attached steering servo on the back. And this iomixer is looking a little bit more simple. There's just 3 connections there, so 2 servos and ESC, and then on here we have just one more plug there for the receiver, which is a FlySky something. So it has iBus on there, which is what I'm using to get, I think, 8 channels from this.
Alright, this is the configuration running on the crawler. I'll just look at the main points of it here. These green ones are coming from the receiver, serial RC input. There's a special channel called channel 0, which tells us the age in milliseconds since the last signal was received. And I'm just using that to make this test called have signal. And if the age is less than 500 milliseconds, it means that the receiver is still connected and working. And this just lets us have kind of a fail-safe. It's not really that important for a car, I suppose, but I just thought I'd show how you could do that. So then I'm using roll, pitch, and so on. I've called these roll and pitch because I'm going to be using an aircraft-style radio to control this. And then my have signal is just used to scale each of those back to the center position if we lose signal. It just means the car's not going to drive away. Not really that important, of course. This pitch one I'm using as my throttle, so that just goes excuse me, straight through to the throttle ESC. In the previous configuration I called this throttle servo. It's obviously not a servo, it's an ESC, but I kind of treat it as a servo output. And then this scale here is from switch 3, which is another throttle cut switch on the radio. And then for the steering servos, if we look at the output, the final output for those, we have front steering servo and rear steering servo, and they're going to be using something that I'm not going to explain here, but it's a struct, or you could consider it to be a group of values that get passed around together, and those are going to be called modes. So we've got mode 1 and mode 2. This will make sense when I show you in a minute how it functions. And so the mode 1 function will do this. So I'm just going to skip over. You've seen most of these nodes already. And then mode 2 is going to do that. And I'll just show you how this all works when it is run.
Okay, see if I can get this all in frame for you here. So the throttle is just pretty normal, forwards and backwards on the pitch stick. And the only thing that I've set up to fiddle with that is that I have a throttle cut here, so that if I turn that off, then the throttle does nothing. This is just to help me not to bump it, to drive it out of the frame while I'm trying to film here, but it's also useful at the bench when I'm testing things to make sure it doesn't just fly off the bench if I get something wrong. So that's throttle cut. At the moment we have this switch all the way up, which is just going to give us normal front wheel only steering on the aileron or the roll direction. If I put that in the middle, then we get normal four-wheel steering, like that. And I say normal because if you put it in the third position, then we get front wheel on that stick and then rear wheels on this stick. So you could do that or that, crabbing, whatever you call that. Then I have another mode which I set up, which I can do this here, and that makes it so that on this stick I can decide with the one stick whether I want forward only steering, front only steering, or if I put it all the way back, then I get rear only steering, and in the middle I'll get both, like that. And afterwards I realized this is not particularly useful, but I just thought I'd show it to you since I set it up, and just a demonstration of what you could do. So if I hold it all the way over to the right and move it forwards and back, you'll see that the share, or the distribution of steering, is going between the back and the front. But I think for me personally, all I would ever really use is just normal front wheel steering and normal four wheel steering like that. That's probably what I would go with. Just to have a look at the difference between the turning radius with four wheel steering, that's about what it's like there. The diffs are locked on this car, so it could be a little bit tighter probably. And then if I just do normal steering, completely different. So I think this will help a lot to get in and out of those tight spots.
Actually, after driving this around a little bit, I've changed my mind. By far the most useful mode is the one where you have the steering on separate switches, because that lets you drive it around most of the time just normal front wheel only steering, and then every now and then when you want to swing the background a little bit better, then you can just put the rudder on to go tighter. I'm thinking of this as the rudder because that's what it is. That's what that stick does normally on a plane or a quadcopter, and also it's kind of a similar feeling because normally you fly around with roll to turn a corner, but if it's just not quite turning quick enough, then you would also add a bit of rudder. At least that's what I do. So it's actually quite natural feeling to get the hang of that here. And every now and then I do feel myself wanting to do the what do you call it? The crab. Mostly it's when you've lifted the front up onto something, and it wouldn't be convenient to go straight,
but you can get the back wheels to grip better by crabbing onto the rock or whatever it is that you're trying to get up on. So yeah, definitely this is probably what I'm going to be using in the future. Not that I drive this car much, but I'm just saying, you know, it's really quite natural.